All right, that was like the big movie news for this week. But now we're going to go into our Marvel Rewatch series. If you guys have been with us, have been watching the show for a while, we have been going through chronologically in chronological movie order, the Marvel MCU movies. And so last week we did Iron Man 3. It was kind of the tail end of like phase 1, technically. It's kind of that transition movie from phase 1 into phase 2. And now we go into Thor: The Dark World, which is very clearly a season 2 or phase 2 movie here. Let's just get some general thoughts from everybody who saw the movie. Let's just say out of a scale of 1 to 10 before even rewatching it. Ken, what did you in your mind have of this is how I rated this movie?
I wouldn't think it's a 5 out of 10. I was trying to remember, again, I've seen all these movies over the course of the years, but one thing I have, one of my not faults, I don't have a strength in is remembering lore, remembering movie quotes, whatnot. And so I was thinking like Dark World. This was not the best one. I mean, I know guys because we have Ragnarok coming up, which is Tahiti. Well, I can't say his name very well, which I thought was really good. And I thought this was the bad one, right? I mean, I was like, I gave it a 5 going in.
5 out of 10. And that is, guys, understand that Ken gave Dark Phoenix like a 7. Would you give it an 8? I think Ken gave it an 8.
Can we? I did put it in my worst of the movies of the year of 2019. So
for Ken, understand, guys, for Ken to give something a 5, that is pretty low for him. Like
going in, wait till I tell you what I did at the end. Okay.
Oh boy. Okay. Elf, did you ever see Thor: The Dark World initially, like when it released, when it came out?
So no, I never did see Thor: Dark World.
Consider yourself blessed.
Consider yourself blessed.
Because yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll go. For me, I was dreading this. If like I was like, this was ever a really bad idea to do, which it hasn't. Like us doing the Marvel rewatch has been really good. It's been good content. People have enjoyed it. But this slugging through and just even like setting it up, like going on to Disney Plus, looking for it, I was like, feel like I'm dying a little bit inside. I'm over exaggerating, but it was pretty bad. Like I'm like, I really don't want to watch this movie. I just remember being so bored in the movie theater. And I don't know if it's just, again, my perception of the first Thor movie, not enjoying it as much, like it being my least favorite phase 1 MCU movie. And then Thor: The Dark World, like being worse in some ways. In some ways it's worse, in some ways it was better. But just being bored out of my mind in the movie theater and being like, this is so generically bad. Yeah, I was not looking forward to the rewatch. But let's jump into the actual review then. Ken, what did you think of the beginning, the opening sequences? We see Thor back on Asgard. We see Natalie Portman and her cast of humanites, kind of studying, trying to figure out a way to get back to Thor or to connect with Thor. I don't even know what their initial plans were, because I don't think it really spells it out, at least not in the rewatch. Like, what were they trying to do? I know they were trying to study these anomalies, but to what end? Was it to reconnect with Thor or whatever? I don't know. What was your take on the opening?
Well, first off, it opens up with Odin telling the story of his dad. So you're trying to get the dark elves set up, right? The narrative, right? And of course, they bury the ether where no one will ever find it. Yeah, right. And someone's gonna find it, okay? And I was thinking, oh, poor Loki, he's in chains, right? But come on, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, he just tried to destroy New York and all. And he needs to be in chains. The opening was fine to set the bounds for everything going forward. I think as for Jane, I'm like, why is she on a date? It's been 2 years, I guess, right? So I guess she's trying to forget him, and she's on a date, and she's just not really into it. And I'm like, if you're not, you shouldn't be. I feel sorry for this guy. This guy is being wasted with regards to this date with this girl, okay, who's an astrophysicist, whatever. And he's like, whatever. I'm like, why are you doing this, okay? But I mean, I think that she's just trying to move on. I mean, the first part of the movie I thought was less about them searching for more portals. Maybe the word would be, because they still wanted to research that stuff, but more about her pining for Thor.
Right.
All his muscles,
Yeah, it's true. What's funny with that date sequence is the guy, I don't think I realized it at the time, and maybe I hadn't watched it yet, but there's a really good, I don't know if it's like a mini series that came out in, I think it came out of London, but that guy who she went on a date with is in it, and it's just called
Really?
IT, and it's about like the everyday working man who is an IT person for like a small company. Like it's these two guys that like work in like a basement of a company, and every like 5 seconds like somebody calls and they have to answer the phone like, did you plug it back in? Like, did you turn it back on? Like, turn it off, turn it back on again. And like just them fixing like the most mundane, stupid IT problems and like their adventures. It's a really good show, and he's the leading guy in that. And I'm like, oh, it's the dude from IT. And he has like the same sense of humor that he has like in this movie, in that one. But yeah, for me, like that opener was like the narrative, like Odin narrating was just kind of like their lazy way of going like, we don't really know how to talk about and set up this whole like ether thing, so we're just gonna tell you that this is what we did. So that felt a little lazy. The other thing was I cannot stand, for whatever reason, every time they showed the human stuff, anything at Earth to me just fell really flat. Like, and nothing against Kate Panning, I can't remember her last name, but the intern of Jane.
Ian?
Yeah.
Oh, Jane. Okay, yeah, sorry.
I was trying to think of the actress's real name, but like that just like her humor, and I get she's supposed to be like the comic relief.
Kat Dennings.
Kat Jennings,
yeah.
that's what it is, yeah. To me, just like it fell flat every time. Like she did not once actually make me laugh. It just kind of made me cringe a little bit every time I saw them. And like
just there.
I think Thor the Dark World was hurt a lot by just having all of the human like Earth stuff. To me, like I didn't enjoy any of that in the beginning of it. Elf, what about you? So did you get to see this at all the second time around?
Negative.
Okay. All good.
Yeah, Ken said I didn't need to, so
Yeah, no, you're totally fine.
He said it was that bad, so
Yeah, like I said, you saved yourself. I was like, don't watch it if you haven't. It's totally fine.
He said it was not good, so I wasn't gonna.
He
took our words for it.
All I know is at one point, I forget where it's in the movie, right, where Thor is like shirtless, right? Like, oh, okay, that's for the girls, okay?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's in the middle section here. But let's.
I'm like, I won't ever look like that.
Yeah. I don't know. To me, I felt like the first one was so Earth grounded and based, like on Earth, that I really wanted to see more of like Asgard. Like, who are they? Who are the Asgardians? And to me, the best part of the movie came out of the opening. See, like still in that opening part, but it's when it first shows Thor, going around in the 9 realms and kind of stopping the wars and, making peace again with some of these people and fighting. I'm like, the movie should have just been based around that, like just give me more of that. Let me see who are the Asgardians, what are their values, what are their beliefs, let me see Thor and his friends, because that was like to me the biggest thing. Let me see like a war style movie where Thor and his comrades go throughout the 9 realms and try to restore peace now after the Bifrost had been destroyed. Like that would have been such a cool movie with this elf. It's funny we have Elf on the show, but the dark elves kind of, manipulating everything behind the scenes and trying to get people to back him and create his own army. That would have been a way cooler movie than what we got here. And I wish they would have sat in that a lot longer instead of just giving us like one really cool sequence of action scenes from it.
Yeah, true.
But let's go to the middle section, because that isn't the way this movie went here. Let's talk about the middle a little bit. We'll talk about the ending and then give it our final scores here. So the whole middle section, Thor gets reunited with Jane. She, while looking for him, gets the ether sucked into her, and is now pretty much an Infinity Stone for the rest of the movie that pulses every now and then when somebody gets too close to her.
Except for Thor.
Yeah, except Thor, for some reason.
Her and nothing happens. Okay, everybody else,
it never explains it. It might be when she just feels threatened. I'm not really sure. But yeah, we get that whole middle section. Thor takes her back to Asgard to see if they can cure her or help her out. And we see a little bit more of these generic dark elves kind of prep their plans. They want the ether. Ken, what did you make of this whole middle section?
So first off, they reunited, right? I love the fact that she says, "I saw you on TV in New York." I'm like, that's right. Why didn't he go say hi? I know in the movie, Avengers, he does ask someone to check in on her and says, "Oh, she's doing fine."
Yeah.
Okay, but it's like, yeah, why didn't you visit her? Okay. The other portion I thought was interesting was here, Jane and Thor, they're having this nice romantic time on Asgard, right? I'm like, oh look, it's Naboo. it's Anakin and Padme, or I mean Thor and Jane.
Yeah.
That's what got me. I'm like, okay, this reminding me of the Star Wars, instead of Thor as Anakin, but
Yeah.
And Lady Sif apparently is jealous of Jane. It was
Yeah.
a good. It was a. Obviously, you're right. That's the to me one of the weakest parts in the game. Like the movie is like, okay, you're trying to get rid of the ether. You brought back. You should not have brought back her. Then of course they want to escape because, it's like I forbid you to do this. And it's like, okay, whatever. You're a terrible leader apparently, but it's like we're trying to save Jane. Well, we don't care about Jane. We just care about other stuff. And it's like.
Yeah.
I don't know. The whole prison revolt, was like, I guess I had to find some way to get them all out again and try to point toward Loki again because he's still there. And it's just, I don't know. I guess it had to be there to get to the ending.
Yeah. What's interesting with this middle section here too, and this is for anyone who likes seeing, like me, I love learning behind the scenes facts about things and why things end up the way they are. Like we talked about last week with the Iron Man stuff, or maybe it was even on our Avengers talk, but why Agent Coulson wasn't even going to originally be in the Avengers, and why Tony makes that remark of I thought his first name was Agent, because that literally was his name in the original script. What's interesting here is one thing that feels really disconnected is Odin's disdain for Jane. It doesn't make sense, in a lot of ways. And the reason for that is it is also a remnant of a script before. This movie went through so many rewrites trying to get it right. Yeah, it did, because originally they had Patty Jenkins on it, who is the director of Wonder Woman,
right?
Yeah, who went on to make millions of dollars writing this female, superhero and empowerment story. And what she originally wanted to do with Thor 2 was make it more of a Romeo and Juliet story, and kind of have it where Odin was really against Thor dating Jane, and so he kind of had this kingdom to rule, and yet he would go behind them to be with Jane, and that there was going to be people on Earth telling Jane, hey, you shouldn't be with Thor, you can't be with someone like that, and then she would have to go around, and it would be this secret love story, this very Romeo and Juliet story. Patty Jenkins ended up leaving because of that creative difference. Marvel didn't want to do a Romeo and Juliet story. They wanted something more along the lines of what we actually got. And so that's when Alan Taylor and Daniel Minhoff kind of took the director role and replaced Patty Jenkins on it. And so then they started rewriting it. But one of the remnants that stayed in there was that Odin did still, just for no really explained reasons, but just didn't care for Jane just because of he felt she was a distraction, I guess, to Thor in some ways. So it's interesting to kind of see just behind the scenes a little bit of things like that, because to me, I agree with you, Ken. I think that he should have ended up with Lady Sif, or I don't know if you said that, but I know you talked about Lady Sif a little bit, but I think that would have been a better overarching love story if they weren't going to go with this Romeo and Juliet path. I think they could have just kept Jane, or brought Jane in at the third act, have the Dark Elves come and bring her in and kidnap her when they find out that that's who Jane really loves, but let him develop his relationship with Lady Sif more, because I really liked the actress that played her, and just their chemistry together on screen. I thought it was really, really good.
Well, considering that, I think Jane wasn't even in Ragnarok. By this time, Natalie Portman was no longer. The thing is, in the comic books, Jane becomes Lady Thor at one point.
Yeah.
So there's tying. That's why I keep Jane into the books, because the fact that she has more, or Jane in the movie has more going on beyond that. Because I don't know if Lady Sif ever becomes a love interest of Thor in the books. I never really read the books so much. Yeah.
In this movie, I just feel like Jane really didn't serve much of a purpose aside from being the one who's carrying the thing, and they could have done something really cool with where in the first movie Thor is the fish out of water, clearly, he's more, slams the beer jug down, and he's totally out of his element on Earth, and he stands out. Natalie Portman could have been the fish out of water on Asgard, but we don't get any of that. She's either asleep half the time or just quietly pouting.
That's right. We don't see much of her exploring the Asgard itself. The mom is taking care of her because she has this thing in her.
Yeah. So let's talk about the ending then. What we do get here in this movie, we get some cool final Star Wars-esque chase scene. We get Loki and Thor finally teaming up to avenge their mom, because she, spoiler alert, gets killed as the Dark Elves take over.
Oh no!
I didn't know
And
that.
yeah, sorry, spoiler alert: his mom dies in this movie. And yeah, and so then we get the ending pretty much of the final fight scene with Thor versus this dark elf on Earth, and wins the fight, saves the day, gets the girl, and goes back to Earth with a little bit of a twist at the end. Ken, what did you make of the ending section of this movie?
Well, it's one of the things where when you have human writers writing a human story, everything always centers around the Earth. So naturally, Earth is the center point of everything. The 9 worlds all lining up. There's Earth, okay? And so it has to be on Earth. This backwards, destroy them in an instant type of planet. Before that, though, when Loki and Thor have a plan, and Loki actually sacrifices himself to protect Jane.
Yeah, he does.
I know. In the end, we know what happens to Loki, okay? But it's like I thought it was interesting. He actually went to sacrifice his life for Jane, and so this is to me one of those things where Loki I think is more of a character than we think he is. I mean, obviously he has this chip on his shoulder and everything about him, but so I said Jane saves the world with Thor's help, okay, and kisses all around, including Darcy and Ian. It was okay ending. I mean, the idea of planting those spikes, saying, flipping them around. That's kind of fun. Them going through all the different worlds.
Yeah.
Finding themselves in different places. Thor's looking for his hammer. His hammer went up to space.
That was the best part. Yeah, seeing his hammer just
Thor
travel
got
back
somewhere else, and the hammer started going to space to where he was at, and then also impacts in the world again. The hammer turns around, comes back to him.
Yeah.
It was a great. It's like fight scenes and everything else. I just didn't the impossibility of like turning this thing all said boop, 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 boop. It's like whatever, okay. And the very end, of course, actually is like Eric gets the whole other thing, boop, and then there goes the ship that was falling down on Thor. It falls down on the Dark Elf Maliki. I mean, that was the only. Otherwise, it was fine. It was okay. Well, it was a heartfelt speech between Thor to Odin. It was really good. I thought it was a wonderful speech, and I realized.
And then you realize it's not Odin.
Well, I remember again. If I recall right, now I know Loki becomes Odin, but when? And so when he also transfers, I go, Loki, you heard from Thor's heart, absolutely pure love for you as a brother, and what he thought of you. Okay, that should have just been. It should have just totally changed him. Okay. That's why I open up. Did it instill anything in Loki? But okay, and of course the after credits we'll talk about it in a minute, but
Yeah.
that was okay.
One of the big, the third part I actually liked a decent amount. I liked the chase scene again. I was like, oh, this is very Star Wars, and I kept thinking, I'm like, this Thor is essentially Star Wars meets like Game of Thrones or whatever, like medieval Lord of the Rings, whatever type of show that it's a mish of the two, which is kind of like a cool concept and idea. I just feel like the direction that they went with it was kind of weird. And then I realized that one of the directors that did this movie had done a lot of episodes of Game of Thrones, so that's why I'm like, oh, that's why I feel that way, or like I see that.
Oh, okay.
So you have those guys here. But one of the big things that I felt was a miss, though, out of this was that, like I said, Thor's mom dies, and you're supposed to feel really like sad and connected and like, oh, heart-wrenching. But the reality is, like, I went back and looked at the script from the first movie. She had 16 lines total, and 12 of them got cut. So in the actual movie, you only see 4 lines from his mom in the entire movie. And so we don't really have a connection to his mom. Like, we're just sad because it's like someone who's important. It's not an important character to us. It's an important character to the characters that we like, Thor and Loki.
Right.
So it's like you feel bad for them, but you don't really feel for her too much, Like they kind of redeem it later on in the MCU. But so that kind of felt like, okay, it didn't impact, I think, the way they wanted it to. It was good motivation for Thor and Loki to team up. And like I said with Thor 1, I think Loki is the shining beacon of hope in this movie. Oh, my voice almost cracked. And I think Loki killed it in this movie again. Like, all the scenes that you have him in, you can't help but feel like sorry for him. Like he's very humanized as a person when Thor goes to him in his cage, and Loki comes and he's all dressed proper after his mom dies, and then he's like, oh, Loki, no more games. And then the mirage goes away and Loki's like room is torn apart. He's not wearing any shoes. Like our boy is like totally beside himself, destroyed because his mother was the only person that actually cared about him, like that really loved him from the beginning, hit through his good and bad. And then to lose her was horrible. But yeah, like you said, Ken, I liked a lot of the later on stuff too. The fight was cool. And I think it was trying to justify or make up for what a lot of people complained about in the first Thor movie, that Thor wasn't Thor for most of the movie. He was like a human. And when he did become Thor, he was very serious. And like that final fight scene was like, I understand now what the power of Thor is. And it was a very serious fight. It wasn't really fun. This time around, the third act was super, super fun. From the get-go, every time you see Thor, he is Thor in his power, using lightning, slamming down the hammer. And it was cool. I did enjoy those moments with it. So yeah, but you want to talk end credit scenes now?
Well, only because there's 2 after credit scenes, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, the Collector takes one of the Infinity Stone, and he goes 1 down, 5 to go, or 4 to go, whatever it is, right? I think it was the first. I mean, we've seen the Tesseracts, we know about these stones a little bit, but that was the first. If I recall, it was the first real glimpse. I know we saw Thanos before, Purple Thanos. But to me, I thought this was the first real pointing toward the Infinity Stones. It was the first pointing toward the fact that something's more going on or will be going on.
Yeah.
And of course, the after credit, Jane, of course, is waiting, and guess who appears this time?
Yeah.
Thor comes back and they kiss. How sweet. Then again, we never see Jane again. So Ragnarok, Infinity War, Endgame, she's gone. So
yeah, I had to remind myself throughout the movie. I'm like, I know this thing is an Infinity Stone, but I don't remember which one it is. And then I checked, and I'm like, oh, it's the Reality Stone. Okay.
Reality Stone. Okay.
Yeah. So at this point, we've seen 3. We've seen the Reality Stone in Thor: The Dark World. We've seen the Tesseract, which is the Space Stone, and then we've seen the Mind Stone, which is inside Loki's the Scepter.
Right. So that one's on Earth. The other one was on Asgard, and the third one now they're putting in the Collector because they can't have 2 together in the same spot.
Right. Which I just thought was cool, and I love that they set up Guardians next. I'm excited to rewatch Guardians. And then also Adam Warlock's little cocoon is there, like right in that's the first frame you see. So
there's a lot of Easter eggs in those frames. Yeah. Good point.
Yeah. So all right, Ken, let's give it a final score here, and then let's move on to gaming news here. So what do you give Thor: The Dark World after rewatching it the second time? You give it an 8?
Yep, I went up.
You went up from a 5 to an 8 for Thor: The Dark World.
Well, and I think a lot has to do with the fact that because you start seeing pieces of the future, how it all goes together. I made a comment about The Last Jedi, that number 8, episode 8 of Star Wars, that once you watch 9, it will make more sense. I know there's been a lot of talk about J.J. Abrams, basically fixed up 8 by virtue of 9. I think, no, he complimented 8. And so to me, I think by virtue of seeing the other movies going forward, it kind of helps out with this one, figuring out how it fits into things better. So,
Ken. I think this is a bigger sin than you giving Dark Phoenix a 8.
I'll give it 7.5. Okay, I'll give it 7.5. How's that? 7.5.
I'm just kidding. You can give whatever review you want.
I'll give it 7.5.
Yeah, for me, Thor: The Dark World still didn't hold up. Some things I was like, okay, it's not as bad as I remember, but other parts, like that whole middle section and much of the opening and all of the human stuff was just super cheesy and annoying and boring. So for me, I'm gonna give it like a 2. This is my least favorite
2?
MCU movie. Yeah.
Wait, you came in with it as a what?
I came in with it like being like a 4, maybe.
4, okay.
It definitely wasn't a 5. I was like a 4. I was like, it's like a 2 to me. I don't like a majority of it. There's very few things I do like, and it was just like scenes of like one-off little things that never really went anywhere or carried much weight. I think honestly, like you said, the most exciting part was the cutscene or the after credit scene to see Guardians being set up and getting ready to go there. I just think this movie wasn't needed. I think again, like the questions I had in Iron Man 3, it's like, well, where's the Avengers? They've already teamed up at this point. I think Thor: The Dark World has a way bigger threat. All 9 realms are at risk here. You know, like the galaxy is to die, and like, where were the Avengers? Nobody came to help him. You do get the Captain America thing. That's the only reason I've liked this movie or like any part of it is you see Captain America for 2 seconds. But
because Loki turns into him,
right?
But,
yeah. But to me,
that's a good point.
But to me, this is a way bigger threat than even Avengers 2, like against Ultron, because
7.
Yeah.
Good point. Fair statement. Because you're right. Because she mentions, "I saw you in New York," which ties into the other movies, right? But you're right. Like, the world is dying. We're about to be destroyed. And where are the freaking Avengers at? You know, are they fighting Ultron or are they somewhere else? Do they like take a break? They're sitting in that cafe afterwards, you know, trying to just sip their coffee, figuring that life is just needs to be, you know, just a relaxing. I mean, Iron Man went through his moment of freak out, right? Because the whole PTSD type stuff, and
And it's like, okay, again, either just keep all of this on Asgard, give us an Asgard related movie, bring Jane there for one.